Welcome back, everybody. My name is Devin Hillsdon-Smith, and this is Site Selectors Are People Too. Hope everybody's doing well. I know I am. It's been a busy couple weeks, but finally getting an opportunity to sit down and just get some work done instead of traveling consistently. And it's nice to be home, right, with the family and the puppy and the two birds, I suppose. No, I love them. They're good little boys. I've had them for 9 years. And fun fact, so if you look it up, a parakeet, which is what they are, Luke and Liam, parakeets, their lifespan is somewhere between 8 and 15 years. So I've either got very little time left with them, or we've got double the time left with them. So I'll tell you, they're rocking and rolling, flying around, doing bird things. Anyways, I digress. So today on Site Selectors Are People Too, we're going to tackle an issue that probably has the greatest impact to the way that our profession is being shaped currently, outside of, real estate challenges and massive federal incentive bills. What I'm talking about, especially into the future, is we're going to tackle the impact of artificial intelligence on industrial site selection and economic development today. I will tell you that I've done a pretty deep dive into AI. Not only in my personal life, right? My mother actually, as of the time of this recording, is on her way to Japan for the first time in her life, and I was able to pull together a fantastic set of podcasts and traditional Japanese music and contemporary Japanese music and Japanese fairy tales, and create all these cool little artworks for each one. Gave it to her for her birthday. And you know what? For somebody who doesn't have any insight into traditional Japanese music, modern Japanese music, Japanese podcasts, Japanese fairy tales, I found artificial intelligence to be extremely helpful. Very simple to use. But this is only scratching the surface, right? That's effectively doing some research for you, digging deep into the broad knowledge base of the internet and pulling something together in pretty rapid fashion in a very organized manner. Now, that's something that's obviously of benefit as we're conducting our business day-to-day in site selection and economic development. But the other area that I've really dug into is trying to determine whether or not there's a deeper use case for AI. When it comes to, especially on the site selection side of things, when it comes to analyzing vast amount of data to help make informed decisions. Now, I'll tell you this, it has been fascinating. It's been useful. I will tell you that the number one thing that I have taken away from using AI in my work has been, it's allowed me to think a little differently, right? AI is not going to, at least in the short term, is not going to replace anybody. I don't think it's going to in the long term either, nor is it going to be able to just do our jobs for us. But I think it helps provide some shortcuts, makes you more efficient. That's part of what we're going to get into today. So for those of you that have not done a dive into AI, artificial intelligence refers to the ability of machines or software to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, right? So pulling together what I said from my mother, right, for the podcast and the music and the fairy tales, I was able to utilize AI to perform a task that typically required intelligence and actual significant input by a human. In site selection, AI algorithms have the potential, and they already can, analyze vast amount of data to make informed decisions, like I said earlier. AI refers to the ability of machines to perform tasks such as learning, reasoning, and decision-making to an extent. So currently, I think there was I know there was a report that came out from the Site Selectors Guild, and I can't remember what the percentage was. I think it was most folks agreed that like 60% of site selectors are not truly using AI. I think that's a missed opportunity if that's accurate. I think today a current use, right? A couple of current uses would be data analysis, geographic information systems, so GIS, predictive analysis, feasibility analysis, data mining, right? We can increasingly leverage AI tools to streamline our processes, enhance the accuracy of our answers, expedite decision making. And I also think that it does a fantastic job at helping to eliminate just natural biases as you're going through data. So for data analysis, right, AI algorithms it's large language modeling, right? I got that term completely wrong, right? Because I'm not a technical guy, but AI algorithms have the ability to analyze vast data sets, including market trends, infrastructure availability, consumer behavior, traffic behavior, right? And then you can use GIS to integrate spatial data with AI, enhancing site evaluations as well. So GIS, it allows for a better evaluation of, like I said, of sites themselves, right? When you can find a way to integrate AI into your typical GIS systems and force AI to process vast amounts of data, again, that makes you more efficient. There's also the predictive analysis, right? AI models can predict site suitability, market demands, potential risks. There's the feasibility analysis. You can automate, to an extent, the site selection process by providing high precision digital tools for selecting optimal sites. You can incorporate factors like transportation networks, utility access, and environmental impact, right? All of these can be considered and more. But to me, the greatest use of AI is data mining, right? The analyses, I still think, from my experience digging into AI, I don't think it's there quite yet, right? I think it's good at identifying information. Like I just said, mining data. I think it can identify hidden patterns and trends in large data sets. And that can give site selectors and economic developers a competitive edge. So currently, if you're looking at how AI interacts with our industry, I think the current use is mostly around data access and identifying hidden patterns and trends in large data sets to allow us to focus in on where the art and the science meet, right? To do our analyses, to build our models. So that's just a little introduction to AI, right? And we all know some of the more popular tools, right? You've got ChatGPT, which I now think is on 4.0, which is supposed to be a much more natural speaking, more accessible type of AI. You've got Copilot by Microsoft. You've got, what is Elon Musk's, is it Gronk, I think, or Grok? And there's hundreds and thousands more iterations. What you're typically looking for is an AI tool that is built off of whichever model you trust most. For most people, that's ChatGPT. And you're looking for a tool that then specializes in what you are trying to accomplish, right? And you're also hopefully looking for a free tool. I personally enjoy digging in when I'm trying to produce models in Excel. There's a couple of fantastic tools, which, by the way, I've realized after going back and listening, I use the term fantastic a lot on this. I think in my daily life, I hardly ever use that word. So it's interesting, right? How your mind shifts as you're doing something different. Right? I'm sitting here basically talking to a screen, talking to a wall. And for some reason, the word fantastic seems to be my go-to. So could be worse, I suppose. So I'd recommend that you dig in to a couple different tools. There's ExcelBot, which is designed to streamline your work in both Excel and Google Sheets. There's Julius, which excels in data analysis by seamlessly reading and interpreting Excel sheets, Google Sheets, CSV files. There's Sheet AI, there's Prompt Loop, there's Neural Formula. There's a lot of tools out there, and if you take some time, right, and you don't even have to be an expert to figure out where these are, go to ChatGPT and ask it for some tools that would be useful for whatever solution you're looking for, right? Maybe it's policy analysis as an economic developer, right? You're just trying to get your bearings, trying to understand if a certain policy would be appropriate or not, right? Just a very binary decision. There are tools out there for it, right? Another great set that I love to use is there's some AI out there that if you can literally just type in a prompt, give me a market analysis and a business case study surrounding X company, their industry, their competition, and their future. And so long as you're using the right tool and you're providing the right prompts, that's critical. As long as you're providing the right prompts, you can end up with a multi-page company report that will help you to determine whatever you're looking for, instead of spending all that time going through all these different resources. Because yes, if you find the right AI tool, it will also provide you with the references it used. So again, it's making life more expeditious, or it's making your work more efficient, right? It's not replacing our judgment, but it's arming us with additional facts and tools so that our judgment can be that much better. So what is the impact overall that AI has on economic developers and site selectors? I think there would be some out there that would claim, and I don't think this is wrong, I think there would be some that would claim that AI, if left unchecked, could somehow replace professionals in our industry, or it can make it so that our interactions are less meaningful and more robotic, right? It would mean that we're just living in spreadsheets day in and day out, instead of having that, as I talked about on a prior episode, having the relationships, the built-in trust, the dynamics between site selector and economic developer. There might be some of that, right? But there's always going to be information out there that AI cannot replicate. So I don't think it's going to replace us. I think it's going to augment our work, and it's going to make us better as professionals, which only means that the end outcome can be better for our communities and for our corporate clients. So we're going to go through, let's call it about a dozen impacts that I think that economic developers and site selectors should be aware of when it comes to AI. So first of all, number one, enhanced decision-making, right? So AI, as I've stated, analyzes vast data sets, and it can provide economic developers and site selectors with intelligent insights, right? Launching points from which you can make data-driven decisions. We can make informed decisions based on evidence rather than assumptions, because the more data that you have access to, the more evidence you have. And so therefore, the more data-driven your decisions are, versus having to make assumptions as you run down rabbit holes and hit the bottoms, right? So it's going to optimize site selection to an extent. Again, AI algorithms, so long as they're used appropriately, can evaluate factors like infrastructure, market trends, and workforce demographics, which can only lead to better site selection decisions. The second impact, which I continue to harp on here, is it can allow for a more streamlined process, right? Or streamlined processes. AI automates repetitive tasks, plain and simple, which helps to free up professionals' time for strategic thinking, right? If you can have it so that you're only spending a couple of minutes versus a couple of hours, a couple of minutes writing the correct prompts, interacting with your AI, instead of a couple of hours trying to get whatever you're asking the AI to get for you, it frees up your time to be more strategic and dig into the true hard-hitting items in your day-to-day work. Because AI allows for rapid analysis. For site selectors, that allows us, at least at a superficial level, maybe as we're trying to determine what are the different markets that we're even going to start with, it helps site selectors to quickly assess multiple locations, compare data, and identify optimal sites. And again, I just need to continue to hammer home on this. It does not replace the judgment of a site selector. It gives that site selector more data and a more efficient route towards making strategic decisions. And so it's all about resource allocation, right? That's how you get a streamlined process. Efficient site selection reduces costs associated with time digging in, trying to find data, scouting communities, travel potentially if AI gets good enough where you don't really have to go boots on the ground as much as we currently do. And it also, allocates resources. AI's resources are allocated towards replacing manual analyses where appropriate. The third impact, I think, on economic developers and site selectors, and this is critical, I think it helps with risk mitigation if used appropriately. It provides an objective assessment. AI can assess risk factors, thereby helping professionals make low-risk decisions. It balances risk and opportunity, right? Generative AI can augment human expertise, can't replace, it can augment human expertise, which produces results that balance risk and opportunity. So if we can save our clients money and we can also help to further mitigate risk, those, as of just me thinking through this superficially, those are excellent additions to our profession. But the fourth impact is that, there are challenges and adaptation problems, right? There's a technical learning curve. Professionals need to understand AI tools and their implications, how to use them, where to find the best ones, how to draft the proper prompts to get AI to do what you're asking it to do, how to prevent AI from, here's a big one, hallucinating. Yes, artificial intelligence can hallucinate, right? You may start asking us to do a certain thing, and if it accidentally goes off the path just in the slightest and you don't correct it, then it can very easily snowball, and all of a sudden it's hallucinating that one wrong fact was accurate, and it's basing everything else off of what it thought that was, right? The snowball effect. So there's a technical learning curve. There's also ethical considerations related to bias, privacy, transparency, right? I said before that it can help to eliminate bias, but what if the model itself, which, these models are built by humans, right? What if there's bias incorporated within the model that you're using that you don't recognize yet because you're still behind that technical learning curve? And I think another, this isn't necessarily a challenge, but this is the adaptation. We need to see this as an opportunity for us to reskill our profession, right? We have to adapt to new technologies and acquire AI-related skills. Because if you continue to sit back and say, this is ridiculous, it's never going to replace us, I can do this so much better than some computer can, it's wrong, those folks in Silicon Valley, they're all, liberals who are trying to push, I've heard it all, right? But if you continue to sit on your hands or cross your arms and say, no, I don't need to do this, you're going to fall behind, right? Economic developers have to talk about other professions, right, that need to be ready for reskilling. For example, as platooning with semi-trucks become more and more automated and there's more autonomous features associated, someday, if we continue down this path, there are going to be less and less, there's going to be a smaller and smaller demand for semi-truck drivers. And so economic developers say, well, then we just make sure they're reskilled and they can go and do something else and put themselves to good use. Or, hey, those folks that are working in fast food service, right? We can reskill them to get them into warehouses and be making a more stable pay, right? We always talk about how there's upskilling and reskilling in our communities, but we have to remember that applies to ourselves as well. A fifth impact of AI is that I think it allows for a more collaborative approach, right? Interdisciplinary teams, for example. AI encourages collaboration across fields. Data scientists, urban planners, economists, policymakers, all working together if the proper platform and model is being used to bring everybody together. But that means that professionals combine AI insights with domain expertise to create holistic solutions for economic development. So you can almost look at AI in this regard as a platform upon which interdisciplinary teams can operate and become more collaborative, right? You can take the insights learned and provided by various subject matter experts, and one person, the collaborator, the integrator, who doesn't have background or expertise in data science or urban planning or economics, they can, by utilizing AI, can find patterns and create a broader picture by properly applying models to the information provided by other members of their interdisciplinary team, which again results in holistic solutions. So the sixth impact, and this is, I love this one. AI allows us to compete a little more intelligently. Economic developers can use AI to analyze data on, for example, competing regions or cities. AI algorithms can consider factors like infrastructure, tax incentives, workforce availability, and then help to recommend to the economic developers competitive strategies for attracting businesses. So when I was an economic developer, the number one thing we always wanted to know was, who are we competing against? If we know who we're competing against, we can very easily try to determine what their 10-year cost is going to be compared to ours, can look for their weaknesses and their strengths to help tailor our proposals to the prospect, right? But there was so much going on. And of course, because you were representing your own community, there was a lot of bias involved as well. If you can use AI algorithms to just say automate digging into and pulling factors, again, like I said, infrastructure, tax incentives, workforce availability, we can then have a more comprehensive picture as to what the competition looks like, and therefore focus our efforts in on areas where we truly need to focus on, versus just going back to the well and trying to get more and more incentives just because that's what you're expected to do. Site selectors can also leverage AI to compete more intelligently. We can use AI to assess, kind of on the flip side, assess multiple potential sites simultaneously. AI-driven insights help us to compete effectively for our clients by identifying optimal locations based on specific criteria, but also weeding out some of the fluff and allowing us to get to the crux of the matter, right? If we feed into an AI model all of the different inputs and key factors of influence that matter for our client and their project, so long as that AI model has been trained properly, you can then tell it some markets that you want to analyze those factors against. And I actually have done this before. The end result, it's not final. It's not worthy of giving to a client, but the end result is always, it always opens my eyes to something that we hadn't found before. And so it makes our judgment and our analyses that much better. It makes us be able to compete more intelligently. The seventh impact is that it helps us to bid more intelligently. So economic developers, when bidding for a major industrial site selection project, can use AI, right? Building off of the competing intelligently that we just talked about, we can use AI to optimize our proposals. We can use AI algorithms to analyze historical data, market trends, and competitor bids to tailor compelling offers that hit the nail on the head a little bit more, instead of us always trying to guess what the prospect is looking for. It also helps economic development agencies bid intelligently by considering factors like land availability, transportation networks, utility costs, right? You can be more intelligent about how you put forth your bid or your proposal if you have a better understanding of various factors within your community. Instead of waiting for the site selector or the company to tell you that, hey, I don't even know why you went after this. We've asked for this type of land. You don't even have it pulled together yet, right? If you can do some work up front by utilizing AI-empowered GIS systems, market research, you can bid more intelligently for projects, which means the eighth impact for economic developers and site selectors, is that we can win more intelligently. Winning a major investment project for an economic developer involves so much more than just financial incentives. And again, so long as you're using properly trained AI algorithms and models, AI can assist economic developers in understanding the holistic needs of prospects, right? Instead of just throwing more and more and more job creation tax credits at a prospect, what if you're not actually addressing an issue for them anymore? What if you're going way too far down the rabbit hole on something because that's just the way that you get more money on the table, right? What if you really took a step back and utilized some AI to dig in deep? What if you recognized that for a wind turbine blade manufacturing company, it's great to have, your taxes offset, but what if the real issue is that to get those turbine blades out of the factory and out of the community and going on their way, you really need a better rail route or truck route that has broader turning radii than what currently exists in your community. Right? What if you could use machine learning by inputting a bunch of factors right through GIS systems to plot out potential truck routes and have it come back to you and say, instead of trying to get $5 million more dollars of incentives on the table through tax credits, it makes more sense to address their potential concerns with transportation because of the industry that we're talking about here? How much more impactful would that be? Therefore, when you win, you're winning more intelligently and you're addressing issues that would inevitably arise. I think a ninth impact is that it does help to provide predictive analytics for site selection. Right? AI models predict future trends, therefore allowing site selectors to anticipate shifts in demand, labor availability, market dynamics. For example, AI could forecast the growth of e-commerce distribution centers, which would guide site selection decisions for logistics hubs. Instead of just natural kind of, this is where we think it needs to go, we're going to follow what the markets are telling us. What about having AI do a very deep dive into the e-commerce distribution center industry along, the Eastern Seaboard, and telling it then, so long as you're using the right one? I'm using a lot of caveats in this podcast because there's so many when it comes to AI, but we'll get into that. But by telling it that, it can then help to forecast the growth of the sector along the Eastern Seaboard or in certain sections to determine where the best logistics hubs could be established. A 10th impact, we're getting close here to our break, but a 10th impact, again, I want to dig back into risk assessment and mitigation this time. Risk assessment and mitigation. So AI can evaluate risk factors associated with specific sites. Economic developers can then assess environmental risks, regulatory challenges, infrastructure vulnerabilities, right, when they're considering competing for a certain type of project. Site selectors can use AI to balance risk and opportunity. Again, I'm being a little repetitive here, but I think it's important, the assessment side of things. So for example, AI models could dig into and better consider flood zones, seismic activity, supply chain disruptions, all when recommending sites. So that was a bit repetitive from I think it was the third impact, but I wanted to get that assessment side in there. The 11th impact that I see is tied very specifically to one area that we all deal with, labor market insights. right? AI can analyze workforce data, including skills gaps, education levels, and industry-specific expertise. That way, economic developers can tailor their workforce development programs based on AI-driven insights, ensuring a skilled labor pool for incoming businesses. Now, a common theme across all this is, we're going to get to each one of these topics eventually, or it's doable by a human, but how much more efficient you can be and more accurate, right? More comprehensive in your thinking and the way that you're approaching things. It elevates our craft by properly using AI. Another really cool impact is that AI can help with inclusive economic development. I think AI helps economic developers identify underserved communities by analyzing demographic data. AI can ensure that economic growth benefits all segments of society if used appropriately. There's so much data associated with identifying underserved communities, defining what that even means. But if you can find a way by utilizing AI to more efficiently comb through that data and start to identify pockets that are at risk, then you can help to promote inclusive economic development in your community and in the various neighborhoods. Site selectors can consider social equity factors, right, such as access to public transportation, affordable housing, impacts of environmental emissions in various areas when evaluating potential sites. So it's kind of on two sides of the same coin, but again, by having an AI model that can process vast amounts of data, you can be more intentional about your actions and your decisions. And the 13th impact, or I guess this isn't even an impact. So I said a dozen, right? The future outlook for AI. I think it's going to get smarter. It is going to get smarter and smarter as it goes on, right? Because it's learning the more that we feed it. And that's the whole scary, is HAL gonna shut down the spaceship, right? Because it's become aware. By the way, a quick aside to my reference there, HAL being HAL 9000, right, is the main antagonist in A Space Odyssey. So if you didn't pick up on that, great book, fantastic film. And we're going to end with this. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Talk to you in a second. We're going to a break. All right, and we're back. So something I'm gonna just make sure is abundantly clear here for those of you that are listening that are experts in the world of artificial intelligence. I'm obviously using a lot of improper terminology, right? Instead of trying to pretend like I know what I'm talking about, I would love to hear from folks that are listening to this and going, Devin, you're talking about AI algorithms, you're talking about AI models. You said large learning, however, whatever I said before, right? You got this wrong, you got that. Tell me, give me some feedback. Let me know where I had it wrong, or maybe just broader themes where you think I've got this wrong, right? We're living in the middle of this transition. And you can tell, I am doing my best to dive into it and better understand it. I think I'm to the point where I'm using it more than I am studying it, which is probably dangerous there in and of itself. But for any episode, if you catch that I've said something that you don't agree with or you think is wrong, please let me know. If I get enough of those, I might set up, do the whole professional podcaster thing and set up an email address. I'm not to that point yet. You can either find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook, right? At the podcast page on Facebook, not my own personal. Please don't add me on Facebook. But if I've gotten something wrong, I do not have enough of an ego that I would be offended if you told me. So I'd love to hear some feedback on this. because I'd love to incorporate it in future episodes to correct where I think I was wrong in something I said. So I ended before the break with the famous quote from A Space Odyssey, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that." And let's use that as an opportunity to tackle our next topic, which is, I think, the challenges and the limitations associated with AI currently in our industry. So let's start off with challenges and limitations for site selectors, and then we'll go to challenges and limitations for economic developers. We're going to take one last break. We're going to do some case studies. And I'm going to end this episode, since this has been a bit of a dense episode, I'm going to end this episode with a joke. Just to lighten things up and show you that, well, as Bryant Niehoff put on his interview with me when he was a guest, this is why I am a site selection professional and not a comic. I hope you get a good chuckle out of the joke that I put out there, but we'll see. All right. Challenges and limitations for site selectors. There's a couple of these. Number one, an over-reliance on historical data. AI algorithms often have to rely on historical data for predictions. However, if that historical data is incomplete, biased, or outdated, the AI model may make inaccurate recommendations. So for instance, if a site selection model primarily uses data from the past decade, it could very easily miss emerging trends or sudden shifts in market dynamics. And this is why AI is really of no threat to us professionals as it currently stands, right? Because you cannot just rely on AI to do your job. You can't rely on it. You can use it to augment your work, but if you run through an AI model and have it, put together a market report, right? If you don't go back and double check and look to see what the AI was using and relying on for its predictions and for its statements, you can very easily get yourself in trouble. So that over-reliance on historical data, a lot of the times AI models they'll tell you like, hey, I'm only aware of information up to 2021, right? If you're then missing the next couple of years where there have been monumental shifts in the workforce and in industrial site selection, if you just rely on the AI, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So that's one challenge/limitation. That kind of parlays into the second one, data quality issues, right? The old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So if the input data or the prompt is fed to the AI model if it's noisy, if it's inconsistent, or if it contains errors, the AI model's output is going to be compromised. In site selection, poor quality data related to infrastructure, environmental factors, workforce demographics can lead to flawed decisions. So once again, if you're not spending the time on the front end to put good prompts in and make sure that the AI is looking for the right information, if you're not second guessing it and double checking to make sure whatever the output is not based on garbage in, right, from whatever it found, then you're going to be led down the path to flawed decisions. A third challenge or limitation for site selectors, AI lacks true contextual understanding. It processes, I think I've got this right, it processes data based on patterns, but it doesn't grasp the nuances of local culture, for example, or community dynamics, or regulatory intricacies. Site selection decisions often then require human judgment that considers qualitative factors beyond the raw data. And that's where economic developers, as I've stated in the past, come in, the qualitative side, right? But as a site selector, you have to know the right questions to ask. You have to know the right areas to focus in on to make sure that you have true contextual understanding that AI is not going to give you. And right there, I think that's part of the reason why we're never going to get to the point where we're not actually working with each other anymore, right? There's always going to be information, up-to-date information, information that is not available publicly, that is critical for a decision-making point. And the only way to uncover that information is by having a relationship, having trust, and working with each other. A fourth challenge is, and I've referenced this before, there are ethical and bias concerns surrounding AI models right now. AI models can inadvertently perpetuate biases present in historical data. So, for example, if past site selections were biased towards certain demographics, the AI may unintentionally reinforce those biases. So, ensuring fairness and equity in site selection is always going to require human oversight. I personally don't see how we get to a point where AI can legislate or how it can provide ethical recommendations or considerations. I think that's too human in nature. Ethics and policymaking or legislating. So if you're not careful, there are going to be biases that creep up into whatever analysis you have AI performing for you, which presents ethical issues for a site selector as they're serving as the consultant to their client. A fifth challenge is that site selection involves multifaceted interdependencies, right? Economic considerations, environmental, social, political. Even though AI models are great at dealing with vast amounts of data, they do struggle to capture these complex relationships between data points comprehensively. So, for example, an AI model might recommend a site based solely on cost savings without considering long-term environmental impact or workforce availability. If you don't train it appropriately, or if you rely too much on it as a site selector, you're going to miss out on a lot of considerations. AI models also operate within predefined parameters. So unexpected external events such as natural disasters, economic shocks, regulatory changes can disrupt those assumptions. So for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic, that dramatically altered demand patterns and supply chain dynamics, which for a while rendered most AI-based site selection models obsolete, plain and simple. So let's pivot over to challenges and limitations for economic developers when it comes to AI. First of all, we've got reputational risks. The challenge here is that economic development professionals work to attract businesses and investments to their regions, right? The harm is that if AI algorithms make incorrect predictions or recommendations, it could harm the reputation of economic development agencies, which is always going to be a danger to the community. For example, an AI-driven site selection model might recommend a location that later faces environmental or infrastructure challenges, leading to negative publicity. Right? At the end of the day, if we all get it wrong, you have to look at who's got the biggest microphone to determine who's going to be able to point fingers the loudest when there was an issue. And so there's reputational risks associated with relying on AI too much at this point. Economic developers, as I've said before, I've actually said that AI can help economic development become more inclusive, right? Because economic development should be inclusive and equitable. But if AI models are trained on biased data, they may or they will perpetuate existing inequalities. For example, an AI-based workforce development tool could inadvertently favor certain demographics and exclude marginalized groups from economic opportunities because the parameters that it was told to consider simply didn't lead it down the right path to consider some of these marginalized groups. It was too focused on certain demographics. And so overall, right, for economic developers, because of the unknowns associated with AI, and for site selectors, but because of the unknowns, I mean, an over-reliance on AI decisions could lead to suboptimal decisions. It could lead to decisions that conflict with community values or environmental sustainability. We all have to be very careful about how we're using this tool. We all have to make sure we are trying to use it, because there are benefits to using it. I mean, another area we haven't even touched on to a great extent would be privacy and data security risks, right? Economic development professionals and site selection professionals handle sensitive data, plain and simple. If an AI system was to inadvertently mishandle personal information or confidential company information, or if it was to suffer a data breach, it could lead to damaged trust. Because let's be real, an AI-driven business attraction platform, for example, could inadvertently leak confidential investment details, affecting investor confidence. Or on the flip side, it could do something that affects community confidence in their economic development team. So we have to be very careful about how we're using AI. But again, if we're not using it, we're behind at this point. There's a lot of benefits to it. I think it augments the work that we do. It doesn't replace it. And please, if you take anything away from this podcast today, know that it is never going to replace those strong relationships built on trust between economic development professionals and site selection professionals. So when we come back, I've just noticed we're already kind of at 47 minutes. We're going to tell one case study, and we're going to wrap this episode. After my joke, of course. See you in a sec. All right, and we're back. Like I said, we're going to go through a case study here. This is based on a real situation. And obviously going to sanitize these facts heavily. But we're going to run through this case study. Not going to take too long. And then I tell you my joke. And we're going to peel off for the rest of the week. So here's how AI played a crucial role in an actual project. As an overview, a large manufacturing company sought to establish a new production facility somewhere in the Midwest. Right? The goal was to identify the optimal location based on various factors, which were, the key factors were identified as workforce availability, transportation infrastructure, utility costs, and economic incentives. So those were the key factors of influence in this project. So how did site selectors use AI? Well, first and foremost, AI was used for data aggregation and analysis. The site selection team leveraged AI algorithms to process vast amounts of data, got it right that time, from diverse sources. The AI tools they deployed aggregated information on labor force demographics, on transportation networks, both the quality and accessibility of, utility, availability, reliability, even down to historical reviews of rate structures, and environmental factors, prevailing winds, because this manufacturing company's new production facility was going to have smokestacks, right? So prevailing winds, and because what they were producing required little to no vibrations, it also helped to comb through a lot of data to help pinpoint the right area to mitigate vibrational risks. So the machine learning models identified certain patterns and correlations within the data, which helped the site selectors make informed decisions. The other way that AI was deployed was there was some predictive modeling done. Now, I can tell you the amount of inputs and data and management of the AI models up front were rigorous to allow for any sort of predictive modeling to be done. But by properly managing the AI, the site selectors were able to use it to predict future economic trends in the markets that they were looking at, population growths, infrastructure development, because the AI was able to comb through a ridiculous amount of transportation office and fiscal office meeting minutes and predict out infrastructure development. It also allowed site selectors to assess the long-term viability of potential sites, not only from population and infrastructure and economic trends, but also from the perspective of political stability, from the perspective of growth in the community, especially when it came to how many other industrial sites were likely to be developed based on historical trends and current availability of land. So the team was able to use predictive modeling when they were advising their client. They were also able to utilize AI for risk assessment. The AI models were trained to assess risk factors such as natural disasters, regulatory changes, supply chain disruptions. It was the predictive side from a risk perspective. And by quantifying these risks, site selectors could then prioritize sites with lower overall risk profiles. Now, could all of this been done without AI? Absolutely. My team does this all the time. This is what we do, right? But was this team on this project more efficient because of it? Yes. Did they save their client time and money? Yes. Did they probably uncover certain things that maybe without AI would not have been uncovered, or certain predictions were not put in play because certain things weren't recognized? Yeah, I think so. So on the flip side, as site selectors were kind of holed up in their ivory tower and using AI to process vast amounts of data and do predictive modeling and risk assessment, how were economic developers using AI? Well, in this case, the number one way the economic developers, at least in one community, were able to optimize or to use AI was through incentive optimization. So economic developers collaborate with the site selectors to understand what mattered most for incentive packages, or where were the pain points for the client. And so by using AI algorithms, they were able to evaluate the impact of tax breaks, grants, infrastructure development, site readiness, and how all of those impacted the company's bottom line and impacted the company's risk profile. And these economic developers, they were effectively able to fine-tune their incentive proposal based on AI-driven cost-benefit analyses, right? Incentive optimization is an efficient way of conducting a cost-benefit analysis for any given incentive. So I can tell you that this community did not put everything out on the table. They did not put everything out on the table. But what they did was they honed in on the pressure points and the pain points that the client was concerned about, and they were able to properly address them through intentional and smart, finely tuned incentive offerings. They did include some infrastructure planning. So AI helped the economic developers identify infrastructure gaps based on the company's needs. It helped them to analyze transportation networks, utility capacities, broadband availability. So they were able to ensure that the chosen site could indeed support the company's operations. And where they found the gaps, that's where they were able to go back to the drawing table on optimizing their incentive package to make sure that there was maximum return for any dollar they were throwing into the deal. And the final way that economic developers used AI on this front, because as I mentioned, there's smokestacks associated with this project, and it's a manufacturing project, and big heavy industry doesn't belong everywhere. But the economic developers were able to gut check themselves and use AI-powered sentiment analysis to assess community sentiments towards a project like this. It was based on historical data. Remember, I said before that AI really can't do a great job at more human aspects, right? Community sentiment would be a very human aspect. But they're able to look at certain types of data and predict out whether or not that data had any sort of bearing to a predictive analysis on community sentiment towards the project. And the nice thing is, the economic developers in this case, they were able to use the information to tailor their community's strategies and address concerns effectively. The first site that was proposed didn't end up being the site because of historical issues associated with community sentiment. And quite frankly, then the economic developers realized this is not the best location for this project for our community. And so because AI uncovered a nugget of information that they were able to use in their decision-making process, the project was pivoted over to a different site. The site selectors understood, the company understood, and you know what? They appreciated the sophistication by which the economic development team approached the matter. And guess what? The combined efforts of the site selectors and the economic developers, augmented by AI, led to a successful outcome. That community that was really leaning in on AI, they won the project. Now, I can tell you it's finally, company's now operational at that location. And the final result, here's something I always like to say. You've struck a good deal if both sides walk away feeling a little uncomfortable because you still wanted to get the deal done. And the end result was still one that was exciting enough to you to sign the dotted line, but you gave something away. The relationship between the community and that company is strong because it started off on the right footing and they analyzed everything. And if AI was not used in this project, the teams probably would not have been able to move as fast or as efficiently as necessary for the client's timelines. And they may have skipped something. They may have gone to the wrong site. The company may have gone to the wrong or a different community. But in this case, the end result was positive. And you know what? I think we can thank AI for some of that. All right. So I'm going to tell a joke. And to keep in theme with this episode, it's going to be about AI. So, a man creates the smartest AI possible, and presents it to the United Nations, boasting it can solve any problem. Oh yeah? So the President of the United States? Okay. How do we solve poverty? Calculating, said the AI. Moments later, printed out a sheet of paper for the UN to read. Leaders from all over the world applied the proposals on the paper. In a month, everyone starts living better lives. Impressed, they called for the AI's assistance again and asked, how do we create world peace? Calculating, said the AI, and same as before, printed a sheet of paper. Leaders applied the writings, and in a month, all wars and conflicts stopped. Everybody hated guns now, and the world's full of love. On the next UN gathering, curious about the purpose of life, they asked the AI, is there a God? Calculating, said the AI. This time, though, it didn't give a response immediately. In fact, it took a whole day of processing before finally printing out a paper saying, insufficient resources. Need more for the computation. Okay, we'll help out, said the leaders of the United States. And they provided the AI with all of the advanced technology America can offer. Then they asked the same question again. Calculating, responded the AI. But still it responded. Insufficient resources. Still need more for computation. Okay, we'll pitch in, said the other leaders of the world, providing their tech and networks to the AI. After the upgrade, the world leaders asked to the AI again, is there a God? The AI responded, there is now. All right. I thought that was pretty good. And the other interesting thing for me to highlight now at the end of this podcast is for the first time, I had mentioned before that I have used a bit of AI to help me get off the ground running with this podcast and kind of get my thoughts going. But we can thank AI for this podcast today. I typed in exactly what I wanted to go through, and it pumped out, we call a crib sheet or an abbreviated script, and that's exactly what I followed. So everything you just listened to was based on the recommendations of ChatGPT. It was a little clunky, I think, at times. It reiterated and repeated some things. I feel like there was some redundancies, and I had to kind of stop and rewind when I realized that there were some inaccuracies. But I think that's a fantastic example of how AI can be used in our work, right? I didn't rely upon it, but I used it to augment my efforts. And guess what? At the end of the day, this whole thing came together because of AI. The joke didn't. That was just me Googling jokes about AI. So anyways, all right, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a little bit longer than normal, but I appreciate you. And despite the fact that computers are taking over the world, never forget, economic developers and site selectors are people too. See ya. Just a heads up, views expressed in this podcast are solely my own and are not attributable to any employers, whether past or present. Thank you.